Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Funeral Home Talk with yours truly, Annayyyy. Um, I know why you guys are all here listening because you guys want to hear the story of Paul Walker. But before we get into all of that, I did have a couple questions come to me during last week, and I wanted to go ahead and answer those before we get into the exciting story. First question being, do the funeral homes remove the organs of a decedent? And the answer is no. We don't touch the organs. Everything stays in the body. The only thing that is taken out or drained in the proper terminology would be the blood. When the embalmer does the embalming process, before inserting the chemical that I spoke to you guys about in a previous episode, he does have to drain out the blood through the main artery, and any other veins that he sees that he can get to. Other than that, everything remains in the body. A lot of people think, no, there's funeral homes or coroner's offices that may take the organs and sell them in the black market. Honestly, I worked at an organ procurement center, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, here in California. I worked there for about a year and I learned a lot being there. I was one of those people who always thought, well, if I become an organ donor, and I have an accident, they're gonna kill me just to get to my organs. They can't do that. The only way your organs can be properly donated to somebody is if you're brain dead. Your organs have to still be functioning, which means if you're brain dead, you're more than likely connected to, as many of you know it, life support. Your your heart has to be pumping blood still. Your kidneys have to be functioning, your liver, so on and so forth, in order for you to even be qualified or considered as a donor. So no, it is not true. We don't take your organs. We don't keep them. We don't sell them in the black market. That's all a lie. Just to touch a little bit more on what type of organs can be donated, that could be the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, and the small bowel. Also, just so you guys know, fun fact for the day, one person can save up to 8 lives. Obviously, with all those organs, if they're all in working function and the person wasn't ill. But in total, if you were to donate skin as well, because you can also donate skin, bones, heart valves, eyes, which are the corneas, veins, tendons, one person can save the lives up to 58 people. So that's a fun fact. Like I said, in order to be considered a donor, you have to have functioning organs. You have to be hooked up to life support. So if you were in an accident and you passed away, your brain loses oxygen, which in turn, what happens? Well, your organs shut down. So that's a one question that I had. The only time that the coroner does keep an organ is if they need it to further examine the cause of death. So let's just say the person didn't visit their doctor for 20 years and all of a sudden they just pass away, they drop dead. Well, they do an autopsy and they see that there's something wrong with the liver. They're going to extract the liver, they're going to keep it, or sometimes they don't keep the whole liver. They just take a piece so they can examine it further and determine the cause of death. It might have been liver cirrhosis and the person didn't know. Once they're done, however, they do dispose of it in the biohazard. So again, just little fun facts and just answering the questions that you guys have, which I truly do appreciate. I love, teaching you all just a little of what I know. And that's one of the things. Touching back on the whole working in the organ procurement center, it was a blessing. I mean, you see life from a whole different perspective being there. I talked to families who were on the receiving end of those organs, their 2-year-old, their 3-year-old little boy that had a heart transplant or a kidney transplant, and they were so thankful to the family of the donor because they gave their child another chance of life. And I can sit here and say I'm a donor. Yeah, I have it on my license, I have it everywhere. But one thing I do have set in stone that a lot of you guys can do, and I wasn't aware I was able to do it until I started working here, is you can leave a notice basically saying, hey, check with my family first. If there's anybody that in my family that needs a donor, a kidney, a heart, and we're a perfect match, because that's another thing. You have to match with the person. Give them my organs first before you go on to the wait list. As many of you know, we have a wait list that's about, I believe, 120,000 people in California right now on the donors wait list. Um, so you do have that right to say, I want to be a donor. However, I want you to check with my family first before you just go and you donate to, a random stranger. But again, it made me see life from a whole different light. And if I can save 8 to 58 people, give them a second chance of life, why not? If my life it's done, there's no coming back, then why not? So just a little fun fact. And I know, again, why you guys are all here. So we'll jump right into it. The Paul Walker story. I have my friend Jesse, who is eager to share with you guys how he was actually there present at the scene. One thing I did want to say prior to that, though, is just so you guys know, with the biohazard industry, they don't go to the scene once it happens. They go after the fact, after the investigation has concluded, after the coroner has removed the bodies involved. That's when the biohazard company is called. Well, why? Because they cannot tamper with any evidence that the police might need or might, it might come in handy. So they can't do any of that. They get called after the fact just to clean up the mess per se. So let's jump right into it. Jesse, if you want to start sharing how it happened, what you were doing that day before you got the call, and your reaction. I mean, did you know right off the bat, like, hey, this was Paul Walker's accident?
What's up, everybody? I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to share with you the Paul Walker story. I remember that day I was, kicking back, chilling as usual, and we got called and they did tell us we were notified that it was in fact Paul Walker's crime scene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it happened. It actually happened, as everybody knows, close to Valencia, up north, and yeah, they called us, to be on scene. We weren't the ones who actually cleaned up the crime scene per se, but we were there on the scene as backup. So I didn't see, his body or his the driver's body, Roger Rodas, as everybody remembers. But I was there on scene. I did see the car, the damaged car. I did see pretty much a lot of evidence, that was left behind from the crime scene. Um, and yeah, I couldn't believe, I couldn't believe I was there. People were, in general, people, fans of Paul Walker were coming and leaving, Fast and the Furious t-shirts and Fast and the Furious DVDs and drawings of Paul Walker. People were just coming by and just leaving stuff, because they were, huge fans of his, me included. And so it was amazing to see all that and to even be a part of it in general.
Now the other crime scene cleanup people, or the biohazard company that was there. I mean, I'm assuming the cleanup, I guess you can say, that they had to do was sweeping, the piece. I'm assuming, right? I mean, do they take the vehicle too, or was that like a tow truck or?
I believe it was a tow truck that came and took the vehicle, and they had to examine it for evidence purposes, because there was two deaths involved in that one vehicle. So I do believe that they took the car as evidence to examine it and collect pieces of evidence from that vehicle. And that vehicle, it was damaged, and a lot of people don't know this, but pretty much what happened was the car they crashed into a pole at first, and then the car spun out of control, and then they crashed into a tree. And when the car hit the tree, that is when the car burst into flames.
And you were sharing with me earlier how, I mean, that's one thing that you would know because obviously law enforcement and, the corners and stuff, I mean, they talk amongst each other, right? And one thing that you were sharing with me that some people know, some people may not know, is that the driver was deceased on impact, but Paul Walker wasn't.
Yep. Yeah. The driver of that car was Roger Rodas. He was a professional NASCAR driver, and the more I think about it, the more it reminds me of how tragic that day was. It reminds me of how tragic that accident was. I mean, he was a professional NASCAR driver. Who would have thought that,
That's
him
so
and
ironic.
yeah, it's so ironic, who would have thought that him and his buddy were just be test driving a new race car, and you know, it's so poetic in a way how it happened, and it's very, very tragic and very, very heartbreaking. And like I said, it was really something to see and something to be a part of. And like I said, what really struck me and what really got to me was when, like I said, when fans started to show up and leave Fast and the Furious merchandise, and that it really blew me away.
You were sharing with me earlier how, again, going back to the thing how the driver died on impact, but Paul Walker didn't. Paul Walker, as you mentioned, I mean, if you want to share, he was actually trapped inside.
Yeah, the driver died off of impact, and then when the car then burst into flames, Paul Walker was in the passenger seat, and at the time there was nobody around to free him of the seatbelt, so he pretty much he pretty much
Burned
burned
alive.
burned alive. Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. That's very, very tragic, I mean, God bless them both and may they rest in peace, but yeah, it's, I like I've said, initially and when I first started this podcast, the main reason why I do it is to share knowledge, to share facts, and give people a different outlook. I mean, your life, it's not a for sure thing. We're not promised a tomorrow, and a lot of people, they take that so lightly, and I mean, I can't, there's no words for it, working on this side, it sucks. I've seen stories where, one story, as a matter of fact, it was a 19-year-old girl, and her and her boyfriend had gone to 7-Eleven just to get snacks. They were going to have a movie night. And her ex-boyfriend, who was toxic, very jealous man, ended up shooting both of them. The boyfriend at the time made it out alive. And the reason why I say that is because I seen him at her funeral. She didn't make it. And it was very disheartening to see her mom. She would go every day. The minute that we picked up her daughter, because again, it was not a natural cause, it was a homicide. So she had to go through the coroner. The minute we picked up her daughter from the coroner's office to the minute we buried her, every single day, the mom would go to the funeral home and she would stand in the middle of the hallway because it was the reception area. And then towards your left, it was just the long hallway that would lead you to where we had the bodies, where, the refrigeration system. And she would stand in the middle of the hallway. And of course, I'm not going to say her daughter's name, but she would yell her daughter's name at the top of her lungs and say, "Mommy's here, baby. You're not alone. We'll see you soon." And I mean, that broke my heart. That was very, very sad, to see and to witness. And we sit here and we don't think about these things. That's another reason why I did this podcast, because I've always said death in itself is like, it's like a taboo. You know, people don't like to talk about it. And of course, nobody would like to talk about it. You don't want to imagine your life without your wife, your husband, your boyfriend,